Anna rushed out of the house, her trembling hands clutching tightly at her thin cloak, the cold wind howling across the fields, but nothing could stop her from running straight for the barn. The thick darkness covering everything around her, with only the faint glow of the lantern hanging outside the barn casting a light. Light like a distant beacon calling her closer, she stopped in front of the heavy wooden door, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst from her chest inside. The soft but deliberate sound of hooves echoing as if the horse was waiting for her or perhaps already knew she was coming. Anna pushed the door open. Stellan stood there, tall and majestic, his deep black eyes staring straight at her. She swallowed hard and took slow, deliberate steps towards the horse. "You were waiting for me, weren't you?" Her voice barely above a whisper, soft as a confession. Stellan tilted his head slightly, a small gesture that felt like an answer. There was something in his gaze, a deep understanding, a wordless whisper that held Anna frozen. In place, unable to look away for the first time in years, she felt truly seen, truly heard in a way she never had with Lucas. A powerful wave of emotion swept through her, both comforting and dangerous. Like an electric current ran down her spine, and in that moment she realized that her life outside had changed irreversibly. The wind continued to howl, but Anna no longer noticed. Everything else around her faded into silence. There was only Stell and a burgeoning secret threading its way through the shadows. Like a flame ready to ignite, Anna stood still in the barn, her hand resting gently on Stell's man, her gaze lost in the distant void. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the scent of dry hay, damp earth, and the warm breath of the horse that stood silently beside her in this still space. She felt as if she had escaped the cold, lifeless house, Lucas's empty staircase and the goring loneliness that had eaten away at her soul for years. Memories flooded over her like a tidal wave. There had been a time when Anna had believed that love could conquer all. She and Lucas had once been like blazing flames. Unstoppable and inseparable. She remembered the first time they had met, how Lucas had made her laugh until tears streamed down her face with his wit and natural charm. She remembered the long evenings they had spent by the fire, sharing dreams of a bright future. Lucas had promised that he would always be by her side, building a life together that they could both cherish, but those promises had become a luxury as the years passed. Lucas had thrown himself into his work, endless meetings and business trips that went on for so long. Anna could not remember the last time they had dinner together without his phone buzzing incessantly. Every time he came home, it was as if they were entertaining a stranger. He'd walk in, drop his bag, give her a quick hug, and disappear behind the screen of his laptop. Anna had tried, really tried, to hold on. She'd prepared romantic dinners, tried to rekindle their old conversations, but Lucas always dismissed her with the same tired refrain. Lucas wasn't a bad man. He wasn't unfaithful or angry or neglectful in the traditional sense, but his indifference had made Anna feel like she was slowly fading away. When Lucas bought Stellan, she thought it was just another fleeting interest of his, but Stellan had become the one bright spot in Anna's otherwise monotonous days. In the horse's deep, soulful eyes, she found a peace she hadn't felt in years. Evelyn was a formidable woman, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through any facade, and an air of quiet sorrow that hinted at her own wounds. Evelyn didn't speak much, but when she did, her words were like arrows that cut straight to the truth. She remembered the afternoon she and Evelyn had stood outside the barn and talked about Stellan. Evelyn had looked straight at her, her gaze as if peeling back every layer of Anna's soul, and said a sentence Anna would never forget. Anna had just smiled politely and brushed it off, but now, standing in front of Stellan, Evelyn's words echoed in her mind like a prophecy. She didn't want to acknowledge it, but maybe Evelyn had been right. It was her loneliness, the emptiness. Step by step she ran her hand gently through Stellan's man, feeling the warmth under her palm. "You know, Stellan," she whispered, "sometimes I wish I could be a horse like you, no worries, no battles to fight, just freedom." His look seemed to say that he understood, and in that moment Anna felt a fleeting sense of relief, but deep down she knew that everything was changing and there was no turning back. The moonlight stretched across the fields, illuminating the narrow path leading to the barn. The wind grew stronger, colder, but she didn't care. Something inside her was stirring a storm, both vague and overwhelming, as if her heart was urging her towards something her mind couldn't comprehend. At that moment, Anna felt the world around her dissolve. Lucas was gone, the cold, distant phone calls and the lonely, endless evenings were gone, there was only her and Stellan, as if they belonged together in some way that demanded it. "No explanation, you were waiting for me again, weren't you?" she whispered, her own voice sounding like a stolen secret. She stepped closer, her hand brushing gently against Stell's sleek black mane, the horse's warm breath puffing softly against her, soothing and silent. Like a quiet reassurance, she stroked him, let herself. The weight in her chest seemed to lift, replaced by a calm so rare it was almost foreign, but then the moment shifted. Anna couldn't remember what made her do it. Maybe it was the way Stell's eyes held hers, or the slight tilt of his head that seemed to acknowledge her. Her touch, maybe it was the storm inside her, the loneliness, the longing, and the hollow emptiness she had been unable to fill. Her hand stopped at the side of his face, her palm pressed gently against his warmth. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, but even that breath trembled. Not a call, but a confession. The horse shifted slightly, lowering his head as if in response. The way he stood motionless yet full of understanding made Anna feel as if he could read the very thoughts swirling in her mind. His gaze met hers, her deep, unjudged, and demanding nothing, yet so magnetic she could not look away. She couldn't look away. Her breathing grew heavier, she moved closer as if the space between them was an unbearable chasm that needed to be bridged. A long moment stretched between them, silent but thick with anticipation. Her hand came to rest on Stell's chest, feeling the steady, powerful rhythm of his heart. For the first time in her life, all reason, all notions of morality, and all voices of logic were silenced, leaving only the rawness of her emotions, or perhaps a part of her that had been repressed for too long. One small step, a slight lean forward, and Anna's world came crashing down. She was no longer herself. She was no longer the tired, hollow version of Anna she had been. She was simply a woman consumed by feelings she had never known before. But then a faint sound broke the spell. Anna jerked back as if she had been torn asunder. As if jolted from a fevered dream, a faint beam of light sliced through the barn and her heart stopped in that instant. Evelyn stood in the doorway, the sharp-eyed horse trainer's gaze fixed on Anna like a dagger. Frozen, Evelyn didn't move, her expression a mixture of surprise and cold calculation, as if piecing together the scene she had just walked in on. Anna opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She could feel her breath rising in the cold night air like an unspoken confession, shame, guilt and fear. Evelyn's voice broke the silence, calm but firm. "What do you think you're doing?" The simple question cut through the air like a knife. Evelyn stepped into the barn. Her movements were slow but purposeful. Anna stumbled back, but Stellan stood unmoving like an anchor, holding her in the eye of the storm. "I don't know," Anna stammered, her voice weak and trembling. Evelyn stopped just a few feet from her, her sharp gaze boring into Anna's soul. Asked her voice softly, but each word landed like a blow. "You are playing with fire, Anna, and once it burns there will be nothing left to save." Anna couldn't answer. She just stood there face to face with Evelyn and the maelstrom of emotions tearing through her. She knew Evelyn was right. She knew the truth in those words, but even knowing that she couldn't stop, not now, not when she had already crossed a line she once thought she would never cross. Evelyn stood firmly in front of Anna, her gaze sharp as a blade, the suffocating tension in the barn thickening, pressing down on Anna until she felt like she couldn't breathe. She couldn't look away from Evelyn's eyes, she couldn't deny what had just happened, and she couldn't make any excuse that might justify her actions. "Did you really think this would stay a secret, Anna?" Anna took a step back, her hand clutching Stell's man as if it were the only thing keeping her from falling apart. But Stell, the horse she had once believed understood her better than anyone, now stood silent, no movement, no sound, just a presence. Anna's voice cracked. She knew her words carried no weight. She couldn't deny what Evelyn had seen, but she couldn't articulate what she felt either. This overwhelming emotion swept over her like a whirlwind she couldn't resist. "This is not something that just happened, this is a choice, and you know exactly what you are doing." Evelyn's words hit Anna like a blow to the chest, but instead of regret, she felt herself being pushed to the edge of a precipice. The storm inside her, shame, anger, and even a desperate longing swelled, threatening to break free. "Why do you care?" Anna broke out in a louder voice than she had intended. Almost a shout. This is my life. You have no idea what I've been through. You don't know how lonely I am. Evelyn's expression didn't falter. You're right. I don't know everything, Evelyn. Right, I don't know everything, Evelyn replied, her tone soft but heavy with meaning. But I do know this, you're destroying yourself, and not just yourself. Everyone around you felt exposed, stripped bare. Anna stood there, lost between Evelyn's cold, piercing gaze and the haunting silence of Stellan. She was just a trapped woman, consumed by feelings she couldn't control. Lucas will never understand, Anna said, her voice dropping to a whisper as she turned her face away, her eyes catching the moonlight streaming through the cracks in the barn wall. He's never understood me, not really, and that's why you're doing this. Evelyn stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking to just a few steps. Anna, I'm not here to judge you, but you need to understand. What you're doing won't give you the freedom you think it will, it'll only make things worse. Worse, Anna wanted to argue, to scream that Evelyn didn't understand. But how could she deny the truth in Evelyn's words? How could she ignore the reality that she had crossed a line she could never cross again? A sudden sound broke the tension, cutting through the silence like a blade. Anna froze. Her head snapped toward the sound. The beam of a car's headlight swept across the field, slicing through the darkness like a razor. Lucas's heart seized and she felt herself go cold, rooted to the spot. Evelyn glanced at Anna, her sharp gaze softening just slightly, a glimmer of strange sympathy flickering in. Your eyes, you have to decide, Evelyn said, her voice softer now, but no less determined. Right now, either face what you've done or sink deeper into this mess. Anna's breath quickened as Lucas' car drew closer, the headlights sweeping across the barn wall and illuminating her pale, stricken face. Anna, Evelyn said one last time, her voice firm and unwavering, this is your moment to choose, and only you can make that choice. Anna looked at Evelyn, then at Stellan, then back at the approaching lights. Her mind was a chaotic storm, but her heart was pounding with a clarity that defied everything else, as if trying to guide her. At that moment, she realized she had nowhere to run. The headlights sliced sharply through the darkness, illuminating the barn door, and etched every detail of Anna's anxious face into stark clarity. She stood motionless as if time itself had stopped. Evelyn stepped back, making room for Anna, though she didn't leave. Evelyn's sharp eyes, usually cold and unyielding, now held a quiet, watchful patience, as if waiting for Anna to make her final decision. The car came to a stop just outside the barn. Lucas stepped out, his tall friend coming in, casting a long shadow under the harsh glow of the headlights. The car door slammed shut with a dry thud and silence returned to the air. He hesitated, scanning the area briefly before moving. Anna, are you in there? Lucas called out, his voice calm as always, but to Anna it sounded like thunder in the still night. She turned to face him, their eyes locked, and in an instant she realized he knew something. Maybe it wasn't clear, maybe it was just an instinctive feeling. But he knew I couldn't sleep, she said, her voice calming as best she could, though the tremor in her breath betrayed her. I just wanted to check on Stellan. Lucas stepped into the barn, his eyes moving from Anna to Evelyn, who stood a few paces away, silent and still as a shadow, his brow furrowed. Something is going on, he asked, his tone curious, his eyes probing. Evelyn didn't answer. Anna knew she wouldn't. This was her moment to face the truth, to take responsibility for everything she'd tried so hard to do. Everything she had tried so desperately to bury. All eyes were on her now, and she felt as if every path had narrowed to a single point. She could lie again, prolong the suffocating burden of secrets and guilt, or she could face it all, the shame, the pain and the vulnerability she had been so afraid of. Afraid to face him, her gaze flickered to Evelyn, whose expression, though calm, carried an unyielding challenge, then to Lucas, whose eyes, though filled with worry, carried a glimmer of doubt she couldn't ignore. She knew she couldn't keep running. Lucas, she began, her voice thick with emotion, I have to tell you something. Something. Lucas froze, his eyes narrowing slightly in confusion. He didn't interrupt, didn't move, his gaze locked on hers. Evelyn turned her face slightly, stepping away as if to give them privacy. Though she didn't leave the barn, Anna took a deep breath. Every word she wanted to say caught in her throat. She thought of the moments she had lost. She thought of the moments she had lost herself, the times she had looked into Stell's eyes and found the comfort I had never been able to give her. She thought of the longing, the shame, the despair, and she knew that if she didn't speak now, those feelings would imprison her forever. "I felt so alone, Lucas," said her voice in horror as tears began to stream down her cheeks. "I've felt it for so long and I don't know how to escape it, everything with you, everything between us. It feels like it's lost all meaning." Lucas didn't respond immediately. He stood there, his eyes searching hers as if trying to extract the truth behind her words. "The truth behind her words? What are you saying, Anna?" His voice was low and she could hear the weight in every syllable. "I've been looking for comfort in a place I shouldn't have," she continued, her voice catching in her throat. "I've lost my way, Lucas. I don't know how to explain it, but I've crossed a line. I don't know how to explain it, but I've crossed a line. I don't know how to explain it, but I've crossed a line." Lucas stepped back, his eyes widening slightly, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "I've crossed a line," he repeated, his voice raspy, barely audible. Anna felt her chest tighten, as if her heart were being squeezed by an invisible hand. "I don't know how to explain it," she said. "I just know that I've gone too far. I've let myself go too far and I can't take it back." She braced herself for Lucas's anger, for him to shout or storm out, but he didn't. He just stood there looking at her, his face a tangle of emotions she couldn't decipher. Finally he spoke, his voice low and heavy. "Do you still love me, Anna?" This simple question. "I don't know, Lucas, I don't know anymore, but I want to find it again. I want to understand why we've become like this." Evelyn remained silent, but Anna could feel her presence, steady and unyielding, witnessing everything. Lucas turned away and walked out of the barn without another word, his figure fading into the dim light of the car's headlights, leaving Anna standing, emptier than she had ever felt before. Evelyn approached her, her sharp eyes now softened with a strange gentleness. "You did the right thing," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Anna didn't answer. She turned to Stellan, who was still standing in the same place, his deep dark eyes watching her as if they held all the answers she couldn't find. She stepped closer, her hand running gently along his mane one last time. In that moment she knew what she had to do. She had to leave the barn, leave the shadows she had allowed herself to sink into for so long. Outside, the moon continued to cast its cold light, and in the cold of the night Anna walked away, carrying with her all the pain, regret, and a flicker of hope that maybe one day she would find her way back to herself.